Good evening. I'll try and sort that out. Try not to. How's that? Good evening and welcome to Stratford-on-Avon District Council Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Lewis Adam. I'm your chairman for this evening. Just some housekeeping to begin with. There's no fire alarm planned, so if it does go off, please make an orderly exit, and the muster point is the car park by the pub across the road. Please make sure your phones are in silent mode or turned off so that they don't disturb the flow of the meeting. This is a meeting in public, not a public meeting, so only those registered to speak are permitted to do so. I'll give instructions as we go throughout, calling relevant speakers at their appropriate time. The meeting is also being recorded and broadcast on the website. Okay, I'll now introduce our top table. From Committee Services is Kira Keller. Our solicitor this evening is Amy Shipley. Our planning manager is Richard Gardner, and our planning officers are Charlotte Dix, Malvina Idzik and Stuart McIver. And Richard, I believe you have a statement prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Just to clarify, my role and that of the officers tonight is to provide impartial planning advice and to assist members in their decision taking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to the agenda then. Item 1, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillors Harding, Holmes and Paget.
Thank you very much. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Yes, Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a non-pecuniary interest that I'm a ward member for Upper Lighthorn, Gaydon and Kyneton, and the first application, land adjacent to Verney Road, Lighthorn Heath, is in my ward. Also, I've received a correspondence from a resident, Robin Hedger, but I come to the meeting with a clear and open mind.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Harvey.
I'd just like to declare that in relation to item 4, I paid a personal site visit. I didn't talk to anybody, and I come with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've also got one myself. My ward encompasses a small part of Southam. As a result, I do go to Southam Town Council meetings, but I remove myself from the room when planning is discussed, and so I also come here with an open mind. That's regarding item 6. All right. No other disclosures. Item 3 then, minutes. We have the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of June 24. We agreed those are accurate representation. Very good. And the 19th of June, same. Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, we can now move on to our first application this evening. Item 4, application 23/02148/FUL, land adjacent to Verney Road, Lighthorn Heath. Our presenting officer is Charlotte Dix. When you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. So the site is indicated on the map by the black circle. The application site is located within the built-up area boundary of Lighthorn Heath on the western side of the village in a predominantly residential area. A school site sits to the west with the GLH area beyond. This slide shows the application site edged in red. It's currently open scrubland with established trees along the north, west and southern boundaries. There's a public right-of-way which runs to the south of the site. Dwellings are then sited to the north, east and west of the site, with the Lighthorn Primary School to the west. The green circles on this map indicate trees with TPOs. So this is a full application for 22 dwellings with new access points from Verney Road, along with associated landscaping and works. This slide shows the proposed layout of the 22 dwellings, along with garden areas, driveways, parking and landscaping. You can see the existing trees shown on the boundaries of the site, which are to be retained, and vehicular access again is from Verney Road. Incidental open space is also to be provided to the front of the site. So this slide shows the difference in the layout proposed under the previously refused scheme on the left-hand side and the pending application on the right-hand side. The differences are predominantly on the southern part of the site, where you can see that the density has been improved due to a reduction in the number of units on the site, There's also a reduction in parking, increased open space, and an improved relationship to the surrounding dwellings. So the top image on this slide shows the proposed street scene plan, showing plots 9 to 18 from right to left. This shows the design of the dwellings and the spaces between. The photo below shows a similar view from Verney Road, with the map indicating the approximate viewpoint. It's worth noting that not all dwellings would be visible from this viewpoint. So this slide shows the relationship of the existing dwellings on Winyates Road with the approximate direction of view indicated by the yellow arrow. The image at the top shows the existing dwellings outlined on the left-hand side, and the proposed plots 19 to 22 are on the right-hand side. The photo below is taken from a similar viewpoint from Verney Road. So as shown by the map with the arrow in the corner of the site, this photo is taken from the north of Verney Road, facing southwest. The site's on the right-hand side, with the existing dwellings on the left-hand side of the photo. The trees on the far right of the photo mark the western boundary of the site. So this photo is taken moving further along Verney Road to the south. The dwellings that you can see straight ahead are number 13 and 13A Winyates Road, with the dwellings on Verney Road to the left. On the far right of the photo, you can just about see the roof line of the school. So this photo is taken moving further south again on Verney Road. This is close to the point where the access would be taken into the site. Again, the dwellings in the centre are the dwellings number 13 and 13A Winyates Road. So this photo is taken from a similar location, but now panning round to face north. In the centre, in the far distance, you can just make out the side elevation of number 1 Commander's Close. And then this photo is taken from the right-of-way immediately to the south of the site. So as shown by the map, we are facing east. The dwellings that you can see here, this is the side elevation of numbers 13 and 13A Winyates Road. And these dwellings you can see are those on Verney Road. So just to clarify, there is a big biodiversity net gain clarification within the update sheet. And further to this update, officers also propose to revise suggested condition 26 to include compliance with the reptile method statement report. Also, new conditions numbered 29 and 30 would be required to ensure the provision of water butts for each house and to secure the details of the private drive. It's also noted that planning obligations towards education provision and the maintenance of public rights-of-way are also being negotiated with the applicant and would be included within the Section 106. So, officer recommendation is to grant the application subject to completion of the Section 106 legal agreement, the conditions and notes on page 25 of the agenda, and the revised condition 26 and additional conditions 29 and 30. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. We'll now move on then to our first speaker, who's Councillor Ben Robinson, Upper Lighthorn Parish Council. Hello. Yeah, if you'd like to come up, any one of those two seats. You have 3 minutes. It's the button on the right-hand side to turn on the microphone. I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning ahead of your time elapsing. Otherwise, when you're ready, take it away.
Upper Lighthorn objected and fully support objections from residents for the neighbouring streets. They've sent letters that you will have seen on the 1st of November 23, 11th of April 24 that support the following points. Proposed level of density is excessive and not in harmony with the area. Houses on Verney Road already park on the road due to space constraints. The proposed house types don't align with the existing 3 and 4 bedroom detached, semi-detached properties along Verney Road. Regarding drainage, has there been consideration on how the proposed development might impact adjoining properties such as Commander's Close? Reduction of green areas could lead to reduction of tree cover and drainage problems, similar issues observed on the other side of the B4100. Traffic has already increased due to recent developments. The new proposal could exacerbate the issue further. The narrow road with its 2 blind bends will likely experience increased traffic if the development proceeds, along with inaccessibility for construction traffic. And finally, the disruption to the school of construction noise and potential effect on the playing field could be considerable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well within your time. Members, do we have any questions for our parish council representative? I have one very brief one. You mentioned the residents who made representations to you. Were they generally just within the vicinity of the site, those on Verney Road?
As close and the road at the other end next to number 7.
Okay, lovely. And presumably the application is from Bromford. Have they been in touch with the parish council to seek your views with regards to the application?
We've objected to the official planning, but I don't believe we've heard anything else from them.
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you very much. If there aren't any further questions, thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, we'll move on to our next speaker, who is Mr. John Pearce, agent for the application. Good evening, Mr. Pearce. So you also have 3 minutes. I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning. Yeah, microphone's on, but when you're ready, take it away.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak in support of the application for residential development on land at Verney Road, Lighthorn Heath. Full planning permission is sought for 22 dwellings, a new access, landscaping and associated works. The council previously resolved to grant planning permission at the site for a scheme of 21 units, so the current proposals represent an increase of just 1 dwelling over and above what the council previously considered acceptable. The applicant is a registered provider and intends to construct and retain all 22 properties as affordable housing, with 82% of the dwellings provided as social rented tenure and the balance as shared ownership. Bromford are ranked 8 in the country providing social rented properties, deliver around 600 a year. The focus on delivering units as social rented tenure will enable the housing needs of those most in need to be met. A range of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom properties are proposed, including semi-detached, terraced and maisonette units, thereby helping to meet a range of different needs. Working with your officers on matters relating to design, car parking, garden sizes, relationship to the street scene, and other dwellings have all been satisfactorily addressed, resulting in a development that will integrate well into the existing street and townscape. No technical objections have been received from Highways, who agreed that access and internal road layout was acceptable. Similarly, the LLFA have confirmed that drainage can be adequately dealt with within the site. Planning conditions are proposed to address various other matters. We note that construction impacts would be temporary, with a build programme lasting approximately 18 months, so the impact on the adjacent school would be time limited. The applicant is willing to enter into a Section 106 agreement to secure affordable housing, public open space, health contributions, highways and biodiversity net gain contributions. The development will deliver a number of benefits, including making efficient use of land within the built-up area of Lighthorn Heath, as well as delivering 22 affordable dwellings that are principally provided for social rent. In addition, the development will secure new areas of public open space, landscaping and biodiversity net gain. Alongside the benefits, there are no technical objections to the proposals. As such, it is respectfully requested that the support of the council is sought through the grant of planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, well within your time. Councillor Parry, vying for a question.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. I wonder whether you can advise what evidence you have for the for putting 22 affordable properties in this particular area. On what evidence has been provided to give you the range of tenure for this particular site?
It comes from the applicant being a registered provider itself. So whilst they could have promoted a market housing led scheme with an element of affordable housing, the type of accommodation or the type of dwellings they build are purely affordable. So because of their interest in the site, it was chosen to be a wholly affordable scheme.
Can I just come back with a supplementary? I appreciate you didn't ask this of the parish council, but does the scheme conform to a recent housing needs survey that might have been undertaken by Upper Lighthorn?
I can't confirm that it has, no.
Councillor Harvey.
A question I'll ask you, but I don't think you'll be able to answer it. Do you know how many people there are on the waiting list for the Stratford District Council?
I don't. Can I ask my client? He might know.
I can ask the officers.
Thank you. Any further questions for agent for the applicant? No, don't believe so. In which case, thank you for your contribution this evening. Okay, we don't have any ward members registered to speak, in which case we can move to points of clarification from our officers. Councillor Harvey.
Can I pose that question? The Councillor Parry's question about why 22 properties for social rent on affordable basis. The question is there a demand for these houses? And my one measure may be the size of the waiting list in the district. Do we have, I mean, the figure I have in my head is 5,000. I don't know how accurate that is.
It's not something that we've looked at in detail as officers because it would be policy compliant anyway. So if it was an open market scheme, it would be policy compliant under CS15 and AS10. Probably the most important consultee to comment in this area is John Gordon, our Housing and Enabling Officer. And I'm just looking at his comments. He says, the overall profile above is therefore wholly policy compliant. The greatest need within the district is for housing for social rent. However, it's worth pointing out firstly that the scheme is not that large. Secondly, that this is a mixed tenure scheme incorporating homes for shared ownership sale. So that's what John Gordon's views are, and obviously he's our Housing Enabling Officer. So that gives me some comfort that this is an appropriate mix.
Thank you. Councillor Eden.
Thank you. Within the report, it mentions that the plans didn't have any visitors parking on, and obviously we've heard our parish council talking about overspill and from Verney Drive. Is there visitor parking now that makes it compliant with SPD Part 0?
The applicant is working on a plan to submit to us to demonstrate that 4 spaces can be provided within the site. I have had an initial plan which does demonstrate that parking spaces could be proposed along this area. Oh, if you can see the cursor there, this area here to the front of plot 11, and also along this area here where the incidental open space is. So we're negotiating with them the provision of that space to ensure that it's in an adequate location, acceptable in terms of high-rise, and doesn't impact significantly on the open space and the benefits that are provided by the visual screening from the landscaping that's been proposed as well.
Councillor Harvey.
There's a question about densities. And the officer report makes the point that there are developments both north and south of the development site, the proposed site, which are of similar densities. However, they, based upon what I know and what's being presented, they may just simply be 2 exceptional areas of density of 32, 33. They may not. Can you tell me anything about the frequency of this level of density of development within the district generally? I'm trying to get a sense of whether this is an unusual level of density or whether it is acceptable and typical.
So if I go back to this plan here, so the areas that I've mentioned within the report are the areas just off the plan here. So it's quite a large area that have been looked at in terms of the area to the north, and also quite a large area in this area to the south. So the applicant submitted some details in terms of surrounding densities and groups of developments to give me some assurance that it was in character with the surrounding densities in the local area in terms of Lighthorn Heath itself. I'm satisfied that whilst it is a higher density than the area immediately to the east of the site, this is not something that is the dominant character of the overall area, and actually the density at 32 dwellings per hectare would be completely compliant with the surrounding area and in terms of the district as a whole when you're looking at development in built-up area boundaries as well.
Councillor Keighley.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question about the open space, actually. We'd heard that the reduction in density would lead to the provision of some open space, which would be the benefit of the community. Could you just show us on the plan where this open space is again, please, Charlotte? And I've got a question relating to condition 16 that you're proposing to attach to this if it's consented, in respect of the management of that open space. And I've just got a question about what will be the essence of that condition, and it's in the context of our proposal to bring in a policy that enables parish councils to acquire public open space. I'm not sure what the status of that is yet, but I'd like to know what that condition might say.
Yes, of course. So in terms of the scheme as proposed, there is no public open space, as we would call it, in terms of the 4 typologies that we would look for in the Part L of the SPD. However, this area that you can see, if you can see where my cursor is, to the south of the access road, to the front of these dwellings, and also the area here where there is incidental open space. So that is an area where it doesn't meet with the 4 typologies, so the parks and gardens, or unrestricted natural accessible green space, or children's equipped play, or allotments and community gardens. But it is an area of open space that's part of the scheme, and it does have benefits in terms of visually. So as you're coming along Verney Road, it really does help in terms of creating a much more spacious scheme. It reflects as well, obviously there's some open space at the front of dwellings on the opposite side of Verney Road, so it means it's providing that kind of, it's reflecting that character, and also going beyond that really, because these dwellings here have got a much further setback. There's quite an area of open space to the front, and we also have a landscaping scheme that's proposed, which would be conditioned as well to ensure that that screening does its job really and make sure that the dwellings sit and assimilate well on that site. In terms of condition 16, so that would be something that we'd be looking for final details as to what would actually be with sort of specification in terms of what's proposed on the site, and then how that would be managed and maintained moving forward. So that's what we would be seeking as part of that condition.
Okay, so if I'm, to be clear for me then, the open space that's on this development would remain in the management control of the developer?
We haven't got that far in terms of the negotiation of that, but that's certainly something I would expect to see on a smaller area of open space, because this isn't classified as an area of public open space, as I mentioned, with those 4 typologies. Okay. The 4 typologies that we would seek are all being provided with off-site contributions in this instance, and that would be secured as part of the Section 106 legal agreement. So that's all being negotiated at the moment.
All right, thank you, Charlotte.
Any further points of clarification? I have one very brief one. Looking at the land, I'm just trying to determine whether it has been developed or used, what it's been used for previously. Do you have an indication of the classification of what the land is and what its previous use might have been?
There's no recent applications or development on the site, and certainly we would consider it to just be open scrubland at the moment. There's no, there were some previous applications going back a number of years for smaller residential schemes that were approved. But yeah, at the moment it would be considered as scrubland.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey?
Yes. Councillor Robinson, in his remarks, raised 8 separate points as the basis for his objection. Are any of those 8 points new to you, or am I? Can I take the point of view that you have considered all those 8 points in coming to your recommendation to grant?
Yes, absolutely. All of the points that have been raised are something that I've considered and did respond to the Parish Council in terms of my assessment as well of those various points to try and give them some assurance as well. But yeah, certainly all the points that are raised tonight are things that have been considered as well.
Okay, any further points? In which case we can move to debate. Who would like to start? Anyone? Councillor Parry?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is obviously quite a well thought out application because it's come backwards and forwards, and therefore I feel that the officers have given it very good scrutiny. Very mindful of the fact that we have a lot of people looking for affordable housing in the area, which often is very difficult to deliver. Appreciate Lighthorn Heath has had more than its fair share of development within the ward, particularly with the GLH development on the other side of the road, in a slightly different part of the parish. But what attracts me about this particular application is there are a lot of small units which are very much in need, and also its close proximity to the school. And also there are some exciting plans for Lighthorn Heath for a new GP surgery and a community hub and a shop. This particular area also benefits from a very good one-stop type of shop within walking distance. So it is very sustainable. And as I said before, I think what appeals to me is the number of small units, and there's some good employment nearby. Ticks a lot of boxes. I think it's a shame I didn't hear about the evidence on why they've decided to go with that tenure. Would have been nice if the agent had been able to give us some information about that. But on balance, I can't see a material planning reason to refuse and therefore wish to propose grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Councillor Eden next, I believe, and then...
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I echo what Councillor Parry's saying, to be honest. I have concerns about the parking. That's one of my little bugbears anyway, and that will obviously eat into some of that incidental green space. However, so long as that satisfies our policy, that's overcome one way or another. There is definitely a local need for smaller area units, and like Councillor Parry, I can't see a material planning reason to refuse, so I would second Councillor Parry's proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. Bear with me 2 seconds. Councillor Harvey?
I don't really wish to prolong the debate. There's no objections from any of the statutory consultees. The density is within normal range of densities within the district. The design is sympathetic to the existing houses in the area. There's a demand for it. It is affordable housing. I can't see a material planning reason not to approve it.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else want to contribute to the debate at this point? I do agree. I think I can certainly sympathise with the parish council's representations, and I appreciate that they brought them here from the residents who will be affected by it. Looking at the patch of land, it does seem that it's sought after for development, and I'm encouraged by the work that our officers have done with the applicant to refine the scheme into something that's more palatable to us. and I think that's been borne out through our process. Okay, I think in which case we can move to the vote. One thing I'm reminded to note is that the proposal, in line with officers' recommendations, also has regard for the conditions which were not in the report that are in the update sheet. If you'd like just to clarify, Charlotte.
Yes, so just to clarify, so officer recommendation is to grant the application subject to completion of the associated legal agreement, and then the conditions and notes on page 25 with revised condition 26 and additional conditions 29 and 30. So that the conditions 29 and 30 were relating to the water butts and private drive. And also to include the education provision and public rights of way provision as well, which are being negotiated with the applicant.
Understood, and I take it that's acceptable to our proposer and seconder? Yes, very good. Okay, in which case, can I see all those in favour of grant?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. In which case, committee resolves to grant application 23/02148/FUL. Okay, we'll just wait a second and then we'll move on to our next application. Okay, we can now move on then to our next application, item 5, and it's application 24/00129/FUL, Cosy Nook Cottage, Keys Lane, Priors Marston. Malwina is our presenting officer, and once she's situated, I'll let you take it away.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. The site location is in Priors Marston, as shown by the black dot on this map. The site comprises of the existing residential garden of Cosy Nook Cottage to the north. The area is washed over by the conservation area designation with several listed buildings to the south and east. The existing public footpaths are shown as dashed green lines to the north of Cosy Nook Cottage and to the south of the site. The application site is within the draft built-up area boundary of the village and within its confines. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a 3-bed self-custom built dwelling. This slide shows the proposed site plan with parking, and you can see the relationship with the existing dwelling to the north. This slide shows the proposed street scene and the front elevation of the proposed dwelling in the center of the slide, and the existing dwelling, Cosy Nook, on the right. This slide shows the proposed site elevation and rear elevation. The site elevation will be exposed to public views within Keys Lane. This slide shows the comparison between the originally submitted plans. So at the top you can see how originally the dwelling looked like. However, amendments were sought to improve the design and reduce the scale of the dwelling, as well as improve the gable design to the front and the window design in the side and rear. So you can see that the originally submitted plans were for a 4-bed dwelling, and currently a 3-bed dwelling is proposed, and the height was reduced by 1.3 meters. So this slide shows the originally submitted rear elevation and the currently proposed rear elevation. And the next slide shows the view within Keys Lane, looking north. The rendered dwelling is Cozy Nook Cottage, and the proposed dwelling would be sited immediately to the side of it. The next photograph shows the view towards the main village road, and the site is on the right-hand side. You can see existing trees that are to be retained, and hedging that is to be retained as well. Another view towards the side. On the right-hand side, you can see the existing dwelling Cozy Nook, and the proposed dwelling would be located to the side of it in this area. This is the view of the a small woodland area. This site would be beyond the trees, so not visible within the main village road. And this photograph shows the properties opposite Cozy Nook Cottage. You can see Cozy Nook Cottage on the left. Thank you, Chair. The recommendation is to grant the application subject to conditions and notes detailed within the committee report. On the updates sheet, you can also see an updated consultation response from Councillor Rock. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm told that the parish council representative is not available, unfortunately, so our first speaker is Mr. Roy Hammond, agent for the application. Good evening, Ms. Hammond.
Good evening, thank you.
So you've got 3 minutes. I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning ahead of your time elapsing. It's the button on the right-hand side to turn on the microphone, and otherwise, once you're comfortable, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chairman, councillors. I'm Roy Hammond, I'm agent for the application, and I speak in support on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Timpson. I've read Malwina's report. It's well balanced, excellent observations, and very pleased, obviously, with the recommendation for approval. So I won't go over it too much and keep it as short as I can, but the principle of the proposal is acceptable, falling within the draft built-up area boundary and also within the confines of the village. And the scheme would not state the accepted, the stated maximum number of dwellings for Priors Marston, and in those respects, the proposal complies with policy AS10 and CS15 of the core strategy. We've worked hard during the course of the application to address the local community's concerns, which we do acknowledge and we don't we take seriously, as well as those of the parish council and those of the local highway authority. I note that the parish council hasn't offered any further comment on the submitted amendments post its initial objection. We've reduced the overall scale of the dwelling, as Malween has already observed, including the footprint and the height, all to improve the relationship with Cosy Nook Cottage, existing character and the street scene. We've also responded positively to Malween's concerns about fenestration window design, and we now feel that we've addressed those concerns. Address the concerns of the Highway Authority, who initially objected. We put a lot of work into that to overcome their concerns, and those have now been satisfactorily addressed. And we believe that the proposal, and again, as Malween observes in her report, safeguards existing residential amenity, including the property immediately opposite. Overall, I believe that the changes made, and again, as observed by Malween, it's a scheme of good quality, would safeguard the character of the area, the wider settlement, visual amenity, the character of the conservation area, and that of the special landscape area, and the settings of the listed buildings in the vicinity that have been pointed out to you. Thank you. I only have one minor comment in respect to Malween's report, and that's the proposal for the self-built condition, teaching you to suck eggs, but a condition needs to make the test of necessity. I believe the proposal stands up in terms of AS10 and CS15 without taking into account the self-build angle, and I do therefore question the necessity of the self-build condition. Thank you for your time, councillors, chairman, and I hope that we can secure your support.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions? Councillor Hench-Seraphin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. You say the applicant is going for a self-build house. Is he building it himself?
That's correct.
He's actually a builder?
No, but you don't need to be a builder to occupy a self-built dwelling. He will bring in a contractor to build on his behalf. But the intention is that Mr. and Mrs. Timpson will occupy the house through a downsizing exercise. Thank you.
Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, thank you very much. I've read that there are still some objections about the scale of the property, and you've done quite a lot of work to reduce its mass and reduce the height. Can I ask why you just didn't go that extra step and bring it in line with the Cosy Nook Cottage? Why was that not possible? Did the architect consider that was not possible? Is it to do with the roof, or?
It is. I'm not the architect. I'm just the planner. It was my conversations with both Mr. and Mrs. Timpson and the architect. My desire was to bring the ridge down as much as we possibly could. But yes, you're absolutely right. It is the available space upstairs and the constraints of bringing the roof down too much. You'll see that it's already a big proportion. Well, a proportion of the first floor accommodation is already contained within dormer windows. So the concern was by bringing it down too much more that we'd lose that accommodation or the amount of accommodation upstairs. But it's also from a design perspective as well. If you brought the ridge down more, you'd need to bring the eaves down more. And my concern, and I think APT Design's concern, was about the overall impact on the appearance. It would look too squat. We think the relationship we're now with Cosy Nook, it sits slightly higher, but it is by no means noticeably higher.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, good evening. Obviously, this application has been submitted as a self-build property, construction of self-build dwelling house. Can you explain your concerns about the self-build conditions? Because it's been submitted as a self-build.
I don't want to make too big a deal of it because speaking to my clients before the committee meeting, they are not too concerned. I guess from my point of view, it's just a question of getting the right decision with the right conditions. So the application, I made it clear in the planning statement that I'm not predicating the application on the self-build policy, which is SAP 6 of the emerging plan. That the application is predicated on the fact that it falls within the confines of the village and is appropriate for Priors Marston. So it's acceptable in principle and it's in its own right. The officer in a report makes it clear that she is only giving slight weight to the self-build component of the scheme. So I guess the distinction is you can still do a self-build dwelling and in particular benefit from the SIL self-build exemption, but it doesn't need to be a self-build dwelling in the policy, emerging policy SAP 6 sense. Does that make sense? I probably didn't explain it very well.
I understand where you're coming from, but if they've actually positioned it and put it forward as the construction of a self-build dwelling house, then as the planning committee we have to consider what it has been proposed as. If it had come forward as an infill dwelling, then that would be slightly different. It'd be interesting to hear what the officers have to say on it, but thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for our agents? Nothing? In which case, thank you very much for your contribution. Now move on then to our final speaker, ward member, Councillor Rock. Good evening, Councillor. Good evening, colleagues. So you have 5 minutes. I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning. Otherwise, when you're ready, take it away.
Thank you very much. I've got my bit good. You will see from the update sheet that following the amendments, I'm still unhappy with the application on the basis of the design, street scene and conservation area issues. Nevertheless, I would like to start with some requests, should you be minded to grant anyway. Firstly, that you add a levels condition to ensure that the height is not further increased. That there is a condition requires details of a sustainable drainage system, as there have been water runoff problems in Keys Lane. Given their constrained site, there should be a construction management plan. I would also say, given the previous conversation, that you should keep the self-build condition as for reasons that Councillor Parry has just mentioned, because that's the application before you. But mostly, that you do not approve this application unless and until you make a site visit to ensure yourselves about the conservation area at this location. However, I have taken some pictures in an attempt to convey character. Is that slide 1? I think it is, yes. Originally, I raised concern about the scale and design, but I hope that the considerable efforts of officers, which I congratulate them on, would yield more beneficial changes than have been now put forward. So what is the whole Priors Marston conservation area like? The significance of the conservation area as a whole is derived from the landscape and agricultural background of the village, rather than the consistency of building styles and materials. Particular characteristics within the conservation area include grass verges, hedges and dense vegetation and walls. Also, its sense of place is created by the configuration and interrelationship of various historic buildings and structures. Not my words, but those of a planning inspector in June 2024, when assessing and dismissing another place in Priors Marston, but referring to the whole conservation area. I've got the reference number for that if you want it. Can I have slide 2? Oh, that you skipped ahead. That's one. Next one is slide 2. I've attempted to illustrate this part of Keys Lane with these pictures. These are the closest to the proposal, which is a cul-de-sac off the main stretch of Keys Lane. Possibly from these pictures, you won't find reason to disagree with the inspector's summary. The question is whether this design and scale will accord with the street scene and more particularly preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area. I'm afraid this design, especially in layout, scale and height, does not fit in and should be refused, and I'd be happy to explain where these pictures are taken relevant to the proposal site. The only figure to illustrate the street scene in the application is in fact the house in the donor plot, which is applied to be split off. Slide 3, please. That house, which was subject to an extension dating from 2017-18, is in fact atypical of the rest of this part of Keys Lane. The proposed self-built house still has a higher ridge even than that. Taken together, the two houses will create a cumulative effect that jars with the rest of the road. I would like to refer to a very relevant application refused and dismissed at appeal in December 2020. I've also got the reference for that. Can I have slide 4, please? That one is only 190 metres away, and they are both in the environment of the spine road of the village, Shuckborough Road. Arguably, that plot was in a less sensitive part of the conservation area than this one, as it faces a row of ex-council houses. That application was a single house, and in many respects is of similar form, ridge height, but in fact slightly smaller than the one before you now. The inspector concluded the proposal would harm the character and appearance of the area. I accept that each case should be judged on its merits, as I did in considering the whole of this part of Keys Lane and indeed the whole conservation area. It is only by subsequent research for this meeting that caused me to dig out these appeals, and for the Shuckborough Road one, noted its similarity. This, of course, is a matter of judgment, but it is my opinion, and it seems that the inspector was of a similar view, on the value of the conservation area for the application close by. Your consideration should take in the whole of the neighbouring properties in this case, not just the house occupying the other part of the donor plot. I'm really sorry to disagree with the officer, who I hold in very high regard, but in this instance I have to differ with the final paragraph of page 36 and on page 37. I suggest that the proposal would harm the character and appearance of the conservation area and hence would not preserve and enhance it as required. It would thus be contrary to CS8, CS9, CS12, CS15 and the MPPF.
Ask you to wrap it up. Thank you very much, Councillor Rock. Members, do we have any questions for our ward member, Councillor Parry?
Thank you. Good evening, Councillor Rock. I'm a little bit confused here. Can you explain why your consultee's response on this particular application was no representation? And the reason I ask that is we haven't got the whole reason this application is before us is because the parish council were objecting and they have not turned up tonight for various reasons, which normally means it goes, we vote to delegate to officers. Can you explain how and why you've changed your tune? Because there's nothing that I can see in the committee report unless I've missed it in, or have you changed it in the update? It's just in the committee report, it's no representation.
Well, first of all, on the non-appearance of the parish council representative, I did discuss that with the chairman. I'm not going to go into that. There are personal extenuating circumstances for that, why he couldn't come here. And in fact, we were waiting on the top line immediately before for an email as to whether he could get here or not. So I can only apologise on his behalf. The chairman and I know why that is, but I'm not going to share that in public. So, and I think the chairman has indulged it for those reasons. Secondly, I had a series of conversations with the officer about the design in its original stage. I didn't click the radio button for object. I could have done. But I think she's made sterling efforts to improve the design because that's what I was concerned about. I was aware that the parish council objected, so I sort a bit relaxed as to, you know, I'd hoped we could take a constructive approach. So I was trying to take a constructive approach. Perhaps, with hindsight, I should have clicked the object button, but I didn't.
Thank you. Councillor Scorer.
Sorry, wrong button, councillor. It's in a conservation area. I was going to ask the parish council, but they're not here. The trees just below, do you know if there's like a little woodland area? If we could maybe get out, if you can't answer, I'll ask the officer. There's a group of trees there. Do you know if they've got a TPO or is a woodland TPO on those below? Or are they in the curtilage of the owners of the application? If so, have they got a management
I would suggest
plan
that's
on
a
it
technical
as well?
inquiry. You could ask the officers. There are, I can tell you from the number of TPO applications, there are a lot of TPOs in Prize Marston, but where they are, I'll defer to the officers till you get the right answer.
Thank you.
Just to confirm, there's no TPO, but they're in a conservation area, so they get protection by virtue of being in the conservation area.
Thank you. Any further questions for our ward member? No, in which case, thank you very much for your contribution tonight. Okay, we can now move on then to points of clarification from our officers. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. I was interested in the photograph you showed of the plot looking out eastwards. And I was interested... Keep going. That's it. That's the one. I just wondered how the proposed development would sit in terms of height in comparison with those houses across the road, particularly the one in the middle, which looks to be 3 stories.
Thank you, Councillor. So I can't provide you with an exact height of that house opposite the site, but I would consider that the height would be very similar to either the existing dwelling, Cozy Nook, or slightly taller.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Do officers have any update on the self-build register in terms of how many, what the demand is like? Obviously, this is being put forward as a self-build, and how are the planning applications? How do they compare with the demand on the self-build register?
It's as it is in the report. There's a shortfall of 2 for the district from the end of October last year.
Any further points of clarification? Councillor Fleming.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could tell me, is this a self-build or is it not a self-build? According to the papers we've got, it's a self-build situation. According to the agent, he said, well, it doesn't really need to be a self-build. So what rules are we going by when we make our decision? Thank you.
Yes, it's a self-build. It's been submitted as a self-build and, most importantly, advertised locally as a self-build. And it's for that reason that the self-build conditions recommended. It meets all of the 6 tests in the MPPF. Probably the key test that perhaps the agent was driving at is the test 1, whether it's necessary. We would advise that it's necessary in order to fix the permission that's been applied for and advertised.
Thank you.
I have a question in regard to some of the representations from the ward member. He referenced an appeal with relevance to the conservation area and how that was pertinent to the determination by the inspector. Presumably that was part of your consideration when assessing this. Can you enlighten us as to how one might relate to the other and how relevant it is?
Thank you, Chair. The appeal scheme, I prepared a slide that will show the appeal site. If you could give me 1 second, please. So this is the appeal site. You can see in the left top corner the location plan and the proposed site plan, as well as the front elevation. And the inspector considered that the location of the proposed development on a very prominent bend of the road, as well as artificial division of a very otherwise generous plot would be at odds with the existing settlement pattern, both including the other side of the road where there is a very close-knit development. So essentially the appeal was dismissed on the basis of harm to the character of the conservation area. But in my view, the appeal scheme is very different to the current application, because the current application, if you look at the site plan of the current application, so this is already existing garden, and in my report I assessed how the proposed development would blend into the existing pattern, and it would essentially mirror the properties opposite, and there would be no sort of artificial division and cutting out into the corner, and the design has been improved as well, and on that basis I consider that the appeal scheme is very different, and in the current case the impact on the local area is acceptable subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further points of clarification? No? Okay, we can move on to debate then. Who would like to start? Or I'll pick on someone. Councillor Harvey?
Always a pleasure to be picked on by you, Councillor. The scheme has been changed significantly and improved. The site is different from the appeal site that was rejected. It's less prominent. The height has been reduced. There seems to be a mixture of designs, of materials and designs in the conservation area. There's no objection other than the debate seems to me to be based on Councillor Rock's contribution of you either think that this fits in and is acceptable, or you don't. It's rather black and white. I note that the officer in her report uses the phrase, and let me find it. The report concludes that the works would result in insignificant impacts on the visual amenity. My view is that the officer has more experience of making these sort of judgments than I do. Based upon what I've seen, I can understand why she's come to her point of view. She's explained adequately to my satisfaction why this application differs from the appeal case that Councillor Rock referred to. And on the basis of the report, I would be happy to support it, but I am interested in hearing what other councillors have got to say. So I won't, at this stage, propose a grant, but I am prepared to do so subject to what I hear in the next 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. I think the fact that this has come forward as a self-build application ticks the box, actually. I think we could be having more debates if it wasn't coming through as a self-build, because we have changes to the Self-Build Act, and we are close on the register. We have a requirement for 2 additional plots at this stage. Gosh, I wish it was like that last year. We could have made some far better decisions if the number had been 2 last year. So purely on that basis, and because of the design going forward, I don't think there's a material planning reason to refuse it because of the self-build element that is attached to it. But I shall wait to see what my other colleagues, and I think it would be nice if perhaps somebody else proposed this evening, but I am in support of this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parry. Councillor Eden next.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I agree with my colleagues across the table. In terms of supporting it, I would draw everyone's attention to the fact that Councillor Rock mentioned a few extra conditions should we be minded to grant. One was something around the levels so they couldn't be changed. I'm not sure if we can do that via permitted development or an actual condition. That need to take some guidance on that. There was one about drainage and a construction management plan. I don't think any of those seem particularly unreasonable, but officers know better than me what meets those particular tests. But under the proviso that we can get some confidence or some additional confidence around those points that Councillor Rock raised, I will propose it, but I'll need some conditions, if they're possible.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eden. We'll visit the potential conditions in due course. Councillor Hench-Serafin.
Thank you, Chair. As being in the building trade all my life, I'm still very confused. When it says self-build, that's what to me means self-build, and this is not self-build. Well, perhaps we should all have a dictionary, I don't know, but no, I can't see any planning reasons to go against the application, but I just don't like this self-build when they're actually not self-build. I love self-build houses when somebody builds it themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hench-Serafin. Councillor Fleming.
Yeah, I just think that I'm quite in support of the project, but I think we need to enforce and keep in mind that it is a self-build and not sort of relax that so that we can all of a sudden have a contractor come in there and build it in one go. So as long as the conditions for self-build are maintained, I'll continue to support the officer.
Thank you. Councillor Keithley.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to the evidence and the debate, I think that between the officers and the applicant, they've done a very good job in improving the design. I was pleased to hear the response of the officer to the evidence put forward by Councillor Rock in respect of that appeal on the other site. I consider those to be significantly different. I am supportive of this scheme. I think, as I said, done a good job, but I would pick up the point Councillor Eden raised. There'd been a lot of concerns about the mass and the height of this building. The design has been changed and modified so the roof height had come down, but we know from our own experience that sometimes buildings get built outside the design specifications or parameters that we see in these meetings, and that it's difficult to enforce minor changes. I would like to see something that helped us restrict the overall roof height with some certainty, if that was possible.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, yeah, I agree with what everybody said, and I support this application to grant.
Thank you very much. I think we just got around the whole table. There's certainly the feeling we know where this is going to go. I'll add my thoughts, and then we'll look at the conditions that have been referenced by Councillor Eden, who has proposed it. I don't actually presently have a seconder noted, so we'll I'm guessing that...
We'll get off the fence. Second, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey. It has been seconded then. For my thoughts, I think I understand completely where the initial reservations came from, and the scheme that we saw by way of comparison to what's in front of us now was plainly unsensitive, and the work that's been put into I suppose regularising is a more technical term, but making it more acceptable in a softer way. I think the detailing certainly looks to do that in a way that I would be happy with in the setting that it is. And I think the existing situation of the site, particularly the trees and how it would be positioned, are much more suitable than, well, make the site and development more suitable than if it were somewhat more isolated, which did appear to be the case for the appeal. But I am grateful for that being raised and shown by the officer. So I am also in support of it. Now, Councillor Eden has raised the potential of the additional conditions that I believe the ward member suggested. Councillor Eden, would you like to just elaborate on those in slightly more detail so we can run through them with our officers, please?
So I may not have jotted all the ones down that Councillor Rock said, but definitely I think there's feeling around the table around restricting the levels, so make sure that the roof doesn't increase any more in height via any permitted development or another planning application. I just want to feel that that's boxed off, if that's possible.
Yeah, okay. I'll come back as you go through them. I'm comfortable with that as a suggestion. Looking at the plan there, I can see there is actually a slight step down from the neighbouring property, so I think that's a sensible suggestion to put the levels on. What I would say is, in response to Councillor Keithley's concern about the enforcing the height, condition 2, as recommended, is an approved plans condition, so that would condition it to be that plan there and therefore that height. So any breach of that would be an enforcement matter. So yeah, I'm comfortable with the levels condition.
Okay. The second one was around drainage, but that's the only word that I wrote down, so I can't remember.
It was a sustainable drainage condition. It's touch and go whether it's reasonable on what is a modest plot on an otherwise undeveloped site, but it will increase runoff because there'll be extra hard standing from the building. So it's arguable, that one. So I wouldn't have too many concerns on that one.
Okay, and then finally, due to its location, a construction management plan.
On this one, I would ask members just to think about how much we're overlapping with other areas of control, particularly highways control. There's no right to block the access. Obviously, deliveries would have to take place, and that would happen anyway. The condition wouldn't stop that. Things like working hours and noise, that would be controlled by environmental health legislation. And beyond that, it is only one modest-sized plot. So we wouldn't usually put an environmental construction plan on this. The only justification would, I suppose, be the fact it's a fairly tight site. But as I say, I'm not sure that condition's given you much more than you already have through the Highway Authority or through the environmental health team.
Okay, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That'll do.
I think Councillor Keithley, did you want to address? Okay, very good. Well, it looks then that we've got a proposal to grant in line with the officer's recommendations with the additional conditions as noted. And the wording of those to be delegated to the officers. And can I see all those in favour?
6, 7.
Oh.
Unanimous, sorry.
I got there in the end. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Committee then resolves to grant application 24/00129/FUL. We'll move on then to our final item of the evening, which is item 6, application 23/02263/FUL, Henley House, Coventry Street, Southam. And Stuart is our presenting officer. Once you're in place, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So the application before members is a change of use of an area of existing retail floor space to create a hot food takeaway unit, including the installation of a new extract system and flue at Henley House, Southam. You can see the application site is centrally located within Southam and is denoted by the black dot on the map. So here we have a location plan, and you can see the application site, again, is centrally located and outlined in red here on the western side of Coventry Street. And then we have a site photo of the east elevation of the premises, which is the front elevation that fronts Coventry Street, of the unit in situ. And then again, we've got another site photo a little bit closer up of the east elevation, which again is the front elevation. And then you've got a site photo here, which is taken from a car park to the rear of the application site. Hopefully the red arrow and map to the side show the direction of the photo. So this is showing the south elevation here and west elevation, which is the rear elevation of the property. So then we've got the proposed east elevation, which illustrates minor alterations, just including the installation of a new front entrance door. And then we've got the proposed south elevation, which has no changes. And then we've got the west elevation, which you can see the provision of a flue here. And then you've got the north elevation, which again shows in a little bit more detail the actual provision of the flue as it sits on that elevation. And then we just go on to the proposed floor plans, which you can see. So you have the existing retail use shop floor, where you can see the majority of that use is retained within the building. And then you have the provision of the takeaway unit here to the side. So in summary, it's considered that the change of use of an area of the existing retail floor space to create a hot food takeaway unit, including the installation of new extract system and flue, is compliant with the relevant policy legislation, and there are no material considerations that warrant an alternative approach. Therefore, the application is recommended to be granted. Please see the update sheet for updates, including the provision of opening hours. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our first and only speaker, Councillor Walster. Good evening, welcome, and thank you for bearing with us. So yes, you have 3 minutes. Happy to give you a 30-second warning, but otherwise, when you're ready, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. The site, as the officer's already said, is on Coventry Street. It was formerly a newsagent and is now a general store. The proposal sections off just under a quarter of the floor space for a hot food takeaway. The Town Council notes that the Planning Authority has yet to propose or adopt a supplementary planning document on hot food takeaways as advised or requested by Public Health England some 5 years ago of all planning authorities. Had this been done, the proximity of Southam College to the application site and the impact of children leaving the college and using the hot food takeaway and the consideration that most hot food takeaways don't come with healthy food would have been a material consideration, or certainly should have been a material consideration. This will now be the nearest hot food takeaway to the college. The Town Council notes the late Rep's comment on the application of policy CS25, where the application is considered to still meet this policy as the retail space is retained in majority. I'm afraid this ignores the fact that the application increases the number of hot food takeaways in the town by 1. And as somebody who leads a planning team, with the greatest respect to the planning officers, that's only an assumption that a planner could come to, that it doesn't actually make a material difference on that policy. Currently, there are 43 businesses in Southam Town, 12 of which are hot food takeaways, either designated or selling hot food takeaways, or 28% of the businesses within there. This increase of one lifts us to just under a third at 30%. We consider, as our town council, that this is significantly higher than it should be for a market town such as Southam. The addition of yet another hot food takeaway and fairly particularly ugly extraction fan adds further distraction and determination to the conservation area, which is already considered to be at considerable risk. The Town Council notes the condition on the extraction to deal with environmental health concerns. I'm afraid this provides the Town Council with no comfort whatsoever, as within the last 5 years a similar, if not prescriptive condition on extraction has been breached, i.e. not provided, from the day one of operation of a similar property. The Planning Authority has refused to enforce this condition on multiple occasions, as they do not consider the breach to be of significant level of materiality. Therefore, unfortunately, the Town Council can put no weight to that condition to its consideration and maintains its objection to the application.
Thank you very much. Well within your time. Members, do we have any questions for our Town Council representative? Nothing forthcoming? No. In which case, thank you very much for your contribution. So we have no more speakers registered, so we'll move on to points of clarification. Do we have any points of clarification from our officers? Councillor Hench-Serafin.
Oh, yeah. Hello, good evening. Do you know where the extraction flue is located on this new application?
Yeah, bear with me 1 second. So I've got a couple of slides which can illustrate that. So looking at this site photo showing the west elevation, which is the rear of the application site and the building viewed from the public car park, the flue would be tucked in here on the northern elevation. So in terms of looking at the map, again, the flue would be roughly here. Again, if I go to... So this shows the west elevation. So you've got the flue coming out of the side of the northern elevation. And again, you've got the north elevation there. So the flue is situated on the north elevation of the building.
So how close is that to... there's obviously people living above in these apartments, or do you know?
I'm not sure if I haven't got the information whether the first floor of this building is occupied residentially. I haven't got that information, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarity on that point, from the front elevation of the building, I noticed there's an overcroft, as it were.
Yep.
So effectively, the flue will be behind that. Is that correct?
Yes, the flue is. Yes, so the flue would be roughly here. It's obviously not visible on the front elevation on the proposed elevation, so it's not visible from Coventry Street from the public viewpoint.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, noting that 3/4 of this building will still be retail. Is it a planning consideration whether there are 12, 13, 30 hot food takeaways in Southam? Is that a planning consideration?
So competition isn't a planning consideration as such. The application was assessed against the relevant provisions of the core strategy and the neighbourhood plan. It's within the build-up area boundary. The provision of a commercial use of this site is considered acceptable in terms of the relevant policies, I think CS22, 23 and CS25. So, yeah, in short, competition isn't a material planning consideration as such.
Councillor Keithley.
It was a similar question to that's raised by Councillor Harvey. The evidence provided by the Town Council suggested that 33% of fast food outlets in a town, market town, is unacceptable. So my question was, is there a policy which restricts the percentage of fast food? That's slightly different to the answer you just gave. Is there a policy restriction on the number of fast food outlets in a market town? Or can there be as many as people wish to try and operate?
There isn't a specific policy. The plan manager may want to kind of reiterate and explain a little bit further and touch upon what I'm going to say. The provision of a fast food takeaway is a moral issue, which in itself is not a material planning consideration. We cannot refuse an application on a moral issue or on the provision of an additional takeaway unit within the built-up area boundary of Southam. I don't know if you want to explain that any further, or
Yeah, there may be a bit of a misnomer around policy CS25, which is called healthy communities. The healthy in that refers to keeping town centres vibrant and keeping shops and services occupied. That in that way it means healthy, not the health of the residents. Now, whilst that's important, as Stuart has said, that's a moral issue. There is no policy as it stands that limits the number of fast food takeaways. That's not to say a policy couldn't be introduced, but as it stands, none of the main rural centres have a policy in place. There have been occasions, I think Studley is one of them, where it has reached a point where there are so many fast food takeaways that a refusal can take place on the harm to the health in terms of vibrancy of that centre. But a third in this case isn't around the level that we would recommend resisting that. I think you would need a policy to do that.
Just on that point, I take it Southern Neighbourhood Plan doesn't allude to this in any material way that could be.
no, there's nothing specific within the Southern Neighbourhood Plan with regard to takeaway units and the provision of sort of eateries, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Eden.
Councillor Adam, you just asked my question, given that I'm from Studley, and I know about said policies, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at I know where the flue is, looking from the front, but if I'm walking down the other side, coming into town, would I just be able to see over the other side of that house and from a street scene point of view, from a distance, would I be able to see the top of it? Or is it just covered in enough?
So you can see from...
it's just below the ridge.
Yeah, I was going to say it's just below the ridge.
But the house next to it is a bit lower, isn't it? So in my mind, I think I can just see the top of it. But I just want to... Is that correct, that line to the left? Is that the height of the next door property? So if you go to the front elevation...
Well, it's kind of, as I shown earlier,
yeah.
it's not on
it's
what they...
If I'm walking from north down the other side of the road, would I be able to see the top of that? Yeah, you haven't got... So that's south side.
Yeah.
So if I'm walking down north on the other side of the road... Yeah, I think obviously it's a conservation area, but I was just worried that if you've got a bit further up, coming from north, whether you'd be able to see a big circular.
Yeah, so you're talking
ducting.
from here, looking south. I haven't got that image, unfortunately. We know that it obviously sits behind the ridge line of the existing retail unit. I think if I show that image there, if there were, I don't consider there would be any views. If there were any views, they'd be very glimpsed, because as you can see, the actual ridge line heading north on Coventry Street of the adjacent buildings is actually higher or appears to be higher based on that image than the existing unit. So I consider it to be very well hidden from the public views of Coventry Street.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's also just worth pointing out condition 7 is conditioned a black finish to the flue to tone it down. So even if the top of it were visible, it would be toned down, and obviously it's not an unusual thing to see on a roof like an aerial or anything like that.
Thank you. Councillor Parry.
Thank you. It's just clarification, really. With the flue, if the building is in separate, if the first floor of the building is in separate ownership to the ground floor, I know it's not a planning thing, but there could be a civil matter raised because the flue is going to have to be attached to part of the first floor of that building. And I think it's just important in terms of communication that if we are minded to approve this, that the owner of the first floor of the building is aware that planning permission may have been given for the flue, because I know it's not a planning thing, but it will be it could be a civil matter. The reason I raise it, we had a similar problem in Wellesbourne where we had a takeaway unit on the ground floor, and the top and the first floor above were privately owned flats, and the property owner of the flats was able to prevent the planning permission being, despite it getting approval, going ahead, because they brought a civil case on the basis that they wouldn't have the flue attached to any part of their building. And I just think it would be important to ensure that whoever owns, it might all be in the same ownership.
Sure, sorry, Councillor Parry. Or just for the, I think it's a relevant point to raise, but should we let the officers just respond to that point as you've made?
Recommended condition 5 is for the extraction equipment to be in accordance with the plans. Now, if a civil matter meant that they couldn't install the extraction equipment, then they'd be in breach of that, and it would effectively stymie the implementation of this permission.
Thank you. No, thank you for raising that. Councillor Harvey next.
Thank you. This application lies in a conservation area, and the 1990 Act requires us to pay special attention. There is no consultation response, or wasn't sought, I presume, from the conservation officer in this particular case. Am I correct in thinking that your view was that the implications for the conservation area of this application are so minimal that you didn't think it was worthwhile consulting the conservation officer? Is that a correct assumption?
So we as planning officers at Stratford District Council, it's not statutory to consult conservation officers on all applications within a conservation area. They are only a statutory consultee for applications on listed buildings or within the curtilage of listed buildings. I consider that as you say, I consider that the application preserves the setting of the conservation area, and the alterations, external alterations proposed are minimal, and therefore, as I say, the conservation area is preserved.
Thank you for the answer. Can I just be clear as a general point that whilst if there is an application in relation to a listed building, you would automatically go to a conservation officer for a point of view, but am I to understand that if an application is in a conservation area, there is absolutely no need to go to a conservation officer? Just as a general point of education for members, I'd find that useful.
Yes, if it's a listed building, then we will consult conservation. If there's a listed building consent, the conservation team will deal with it themselves. If it's in a conservation area, it depends on the scheme. It would have to be a significant scheme, simply because of resources. We've got so many conservation areas, but only so many conservation officers. This is one that's of such a low scale that it's perfectly acceptable for a qualified planning officer to make that judgment, because it's not a dissimilar judgment to a planning judgment.
Councillor Keighley? No? Any further points of clarification? In which case we can move to debate. Who would like to start? Councillor Keighley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll start this. I think this is a good report from the officers. I mean, we've heard the objections from the Town Council. I'm not persuaded that there needs to be a policy on the number of fast food takeaway units in Southam. I'm not either persuaded that just because it's a fast food takeaway, it necessarily is unhealthy food. You could have a baked potato, for example, that'd be quite healthy. I don't think we can see the flu from what I've seen from the plans. The environmental health team have been and said there's no noise or odour impacts and amenity impacts on neighbours. I'm happy to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation to grant.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey.
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go next within the debate? No further contributions? Okay, well, I'll just add that I think we've afforded this application a respectable amount of time this evening, and I'm glad we have, because I feel that valid points were raised by our statutory consultees, and they've given me food for thought in terms of what policies we do have around this area and what may be useful going forwards. That said, yes, I agree. I don't think we have anything substantive that we could refuse the application on, and so I'll support it on that basis. So we've had a proposal to grant in line with the officer's recommendations. Can I see all those in favour, please?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. In which case, committee resolves to grant application 23/02263/FUL. Item 7, urgent business. No urgent business, in which case meeting's closed. Thank you very much, everybody.